Special call meeting to order. We have a very short agenda this morning that will take us a lot of time, but just one item, and that's the energy efficiency report and other capital improvement needs. And we're going to have a discussion. And the fact that we have the lack of a quorum, we think the mayor is on his way, but we'll go ahead and let our presenter start. If he doesn't show up, then it'll just be a discussion. We'll be conducting official business, but we don't have any plans to make any decisions this morning anyway. So, with that said, you guys want to go ahead and start your presentation?
Just try out your new technology here. Okay. Really want to start with thanking the commission and thanking the city. We've known each other now for well over a year, and we've been in partnership for a year. So a lot of work and really great partnership since. So thank the commission and thank the city and Earl and his extended team for the access they've given us to your facilities, to your data, to really get to this point. Um, from an agenda standpoint today, a lot of what you've seen to this point in time will be the same. This really gets it to a final contract. We have three final contracts to leave with the city for review. So it gets it to that point where the price is guaranteed, the savings is guaranteed, and the project's ready to move forward. Next step, actually with great timing with RJ walking in, is to talk about financing and for us to follow up with Michelle and RJ to uh, start the financial package. But want to just start with just reminding you, it's not just Anthony and I. You've had the opportunity to work with Anthony for an extended period of time and me for over a year, but we have a team of resources behind us that Earl's met a lot of, Chris has met a lot of. We have about 300 people here in southern Indiana, Kentucky, serving this market. We're a very local company. Our office is in Lexington, Louisville, Evansville, Bowling Green, and Fort Knox. And we are also partnered with, obviously, the Train Company. Train is also a very local company. About 6,000 employees just here in Lexington at the plant. We have a plant also in northern Tennessee, just south of Fort Campbell. And we have a plant in just across the river in Indiana. So Train, as well as Hartshaw Train, has definitely a commitment to this area. We assemble our team in different business units, and we do that really for you. We don't want anything to ever be an event. So as we look at entering into this project, it's just one step in the relationship. We have a systems team, a HVAC distribution team. That's really our parts business. We have a service business and an energy services business. Anthony and I are housed in the energy service business, but we work throughout our company. So when you think about your project that we're looking at, you're going to have an ongoing service relationship with us and with our extended team. You're going to have an intelligence services relationship. You're going to have M&V services. We try to make that very easy for you, and we try to assemble our teams in such a way that we can serve you with all your needs related to facilities and related to utility systems. I want to just take a second and talk about the successes, and I don't want to do it braggadociously. I really just want to allow you to know the depths of the team and the achievements that we have. Like I said, nothing's ever an event, it is a process. We are the leading provider of Energy Star facilities and processes. We're really proud of that because that's not something we say or we do, it's something we do with our clients. What it means to be an Energy Star building or process is you're on the top quartile of your peers. And that's by recorded data, federally regulated data, that you serve your mission first, your need, whether that's a city hall like you have here or a wastewater treatment facility, and then it's recorded through the EPA that you are in best of class for energy performance. So we're extremely proud of that. Here locally, and that number is actually a little outdated, we're over $400 million of improvements, paid for savings projects over the last 20 years. And I know some of you had the opportunity to visit with us at Fort Knox to go spend a day with a client that's made deep investments. And I know sometimes it's really important to see work that's been achieved, and that by no means was a single event. It was multiple projects executed over a 13-year period. But as you can see there with the bullet, we're extremely blessed and honored to be part of that, that we reduced their energy consumption by 50%. That's raw data. The post has grown. If you think of what the 18-year-old looked like 20 years ago, and what they look like now. They come in bringing iPhones and Xboxes, and load has went up. The mission has grown, and we've still cut the consumption by over 50%. So really fortunate to be part of that, and obviously multiple municipal projects in local gov and county government as well. Let's start off with talking about, because this is very important, talking about how the savings actually take part. So I alluded early on that we'll talk about the financials at the end. There's a lot of things you're looking at in a budgeting cycle, but hopefully this one's an easy project. You're gonna see a project, and we'll end on the financials. That's an $8 million project, completely paid for from savings. So it's important to understand how those savings flow. This is a real example here in your town for the Danville Independent Schools that was done multiple years ago. And we've had the good fortune of always exceeding the guarantee. So the savings are actually higher than expected. But a $3.8 million project was paid for out of three buckets. It was paid for out of an energy bucket by reducing their utility bill by 30% by putting new systems in, reducing their maintenance spend at $50,000 a year, and then reducing their capital budget from not making repairs and not having to fund new systems. And that'll be, think of that graphic as we get through and look at the pro forma. Going to dig into the technicals, and I won't go too technical, but we're trying to cover it a little bit in a summary. This is probably the fourth time you've seen this information. If you think of the process you went through a competitive process and selected us about a year ago, and we're now finalizing details to bring you this final contract. What you've seen in December had multiple options that you pared down to this project. And like I said, this project is completely paid for from savings. One of the last things we hadn't done is we hadn't selected a final manufacturer. So working with Earl and with your team, we interviewed three different partners, best-in-class technologies that we could stand behind as Trane and provide a guarantee to you. In the end, and this involved a lot of your team, Chris, Michelle, Heidi was in there as a system operator, so everybody had their perspective on what Alex, what is the right system for you. The system that we all collectively selected was Census. The reason we did that is, first off, it was the best life cycle value. So just looking at the financials, a balance of investment costs to savings we could guarantee and provide for you as the city. So they were the best life cycle costs. But that wasn't the only thing. There was a lot of benefits in the fact that you have about 10,000 meters here in the city, a little over 10,000 meters. About 2,000 of those have been updated. They're accurate meters, and they're on a AMR or a drive-by system where a person literally drives past a row of houses, collects the data, and it goes through the system. So the data has very, very high integrity, and it's very, very accurate. So we didn't look at replacing those, but that group of meters you've already upgraded with Census. So as we made Census, that was a really nice thing as we were going to upgrade your whole system to have a system that's consistent and with one provider. So that was a benefit. At the same time, Census had some best-in-class technologies, and as we looked at what could be in the future, you could, in the next 5 or 10 years, upgrade those existing AMR meters to AMI, which would be a nice benefit. And you also could take advantage of the fact that they are leading the market with partners like ourselves in getting pressure reading systems in and auto shut-off systems. And Chris and Earl and your team really, really like that. So there's a lot of benefits, but benefit to you as the city. Everybody really left feeling really good about that process. It was kind of one of our final steps in the procurement nature of the project, and everybody really felt good about the efforts from all partners because they're all good providers. But in the end, the selection process you used did deliver the best partner for you within Census. So really excited about that. The meters are the key catalyst that drives the new revenue. So we tested a sample of your meters last year to see your system inaccuracy, and we take that inaccuracy and we look at the new meters, the Census meters, and where they could be and what we can guarantee the city for a 20-year period for accuracy, and that's what generates the new revenue. So that's a portion of the savings. The other portion is really in the AMI system. So I have a kind of a generic graphic here that just shows what an AMI system is. So AMI stands for Advanced Meter Infrastructure, and it's what's called a fixed base system. And it allows you a lot of benefits. So we talked about the meters increasing the accuracy and essentially the new revenues the city could get. There's also a lot of savings, tangible financial savings in the AMI system from the fact that You now have great integrity in your data. Beforehand, you used to have someone that went out on a rainy day like today, and I tell you, it's a lot harder on a rainy day or a cold, snowy day than it is a 70-degree spring day. You'd have to go down, get in a pit, look at a meter that's got water in it. If it's not your route, you might have to be cognitive of if it's read in cubic feet or read in gallons. As you can imagine, that could end up with some variation in data. You don't have that with AMI. AMI is a computer talking to a computer that once it's commissioned, that data, that the integrity of the data is great. You also have the benefit of the fact that you now have technology out there, and we want to really deploy it to its full extent. If you have a citizen that calls with a high bill concern, you have to send somebody back on nearly 8,000 meters to go read that 1 meter. Well, you have to take somebody out of the normal day to go read a couple meters, and unfortunately, there's several of those that you're reading each month. With an AMI system, whoever that administrator is will go for those accounts, they'll toggle a button on, they'll pull it, and within 5 minutes, they've reread all those meters to see that there may have been a problem or there may not have been. But even better, proactively now you can use this technology. So this technology, because you build the analytics into it, the smarts into it, if you will, to know if there's a problem. So if I'm a citizen here and my normal consumption rate is X and it climbs faster than it should be, you can alarm. There's built-in functions at the same time that if you have continual flow for a 2-day period, which should really never happen. I mean, if you fill a pool, that's going to take a while, but it's an anomaly. So if you have this anomaly, you proactively can now call your citizen and say, Mr. Citizen, not sure, but you may want to check to see if you have a leak because we've seen continual flow. And you think of as a bill payer, what a great service that is, because now you're getting a proactive call going, Mr. Markham, we don't want to charge you more than you need. You may check to see if you have a leak and you go out and proactively fix it. And you start to wonder, well, is that lost revenue for the city? It's really not, because that's the most expensive water you make is the water you produce all day long, because you're paying demand penalties for that water. So it is truly one of those win-wins where you're providing additional service to your citizen and you're not losing any money in doing it. So there's a lot of benefits there within the AMI system. So you think about the customer service and the customer impact. I mean, you have a wonderful city here. Your citizens really enjoy being here. You already have really, really good customer service, but you can even take that up a step, up a notch, providing them that real-time data. And by the way, I'm going kind of quickly here because we've covered some of this information a couple times, not intending to omit anything. So if you got a question, ask me at any point in time. Switching gears here a little bit to focus on buildings now. When Anthony and I started working in totality with you, one of the first things that came to our attention is you had a mechanical system here at City Hall that was only a couple years old. It's only about 8 years old. And unfortunately, it was not doing the job. It was not delivering you comfort. And there was a lot of complaints. And obviously, we're trained. You bought a great system, and you bought a good mechanical system, good control system. Wasn't designed by Trane, wasn't installed by Trane, and wasn't maintained by Trane or even the suggested maintenance procedures. One of the things that quickly came out and we addressed really head on with your team is we'd love to help with that, and we know we can. So you'd asked us to dig into that. And one of the first decisions we really had to make is, do you start over? Because there were so many problems. And you pick an area of the building, there was some level of complaint. And many of them justified. Not every comfort complaint is correct. The ones in your buildings were. You had many places that were overcooled, overheated. So what we did is we went through an extensive process to make sure that your system could be reused, because to just rip it out and start over would be throwing a major investment you made out the window. We didn't want to do that arbitrarily. What we found out is it was kind of a comedy of errors. And as I shared with you before, I'm a car advocate. I'm a big car guy. It was pick your favorite car, whether it's a luxury car or a sports car, and you bought that. You bought a great car. You bought a Mercedes. But unfortunately, we weren't changing the oil. We didn't check the alignment. It hadn't went to the dealership. We were kind of only changing the air around a couple places, in the tires, just to keep the tires balanced right, which your team had no way to know everything that had or should have been done to the system because no one had ever told them. So what we came and worked with Ron and Earl to look at is, a process of really restoring this system you have because you bought a great system. Let's bring it back to its design intent. That will fix 85, 90% of every problem. So you quickly go, okay, well, what about the other 10%? We may fix the 10% in the initial uh, phase of improvement, but what we said is how we get at that 10% cost effectively and from a platform where everyone feels great about the process is we enter into a process we call intelligent services. So what we're going to do is we're going to recommission the air side and the water side. As you go around the building, you'll see, and I would do it too. You know, people are sitting there with cold air blowing on their desk. They've literally covered diffusers with paper, blocking it so cold air is not blowing on them. And you have to. But as you do that, now I cover my diffuser and I pass air to Mr. Wright. Well, now he's getting too much air. So it's this problem that just builds. So we're going to rebalance the whole air side system and the water side system. You've had some challenges with debris and things in your water system. We'll completely rebalance the system back to design intent. We're going to update your control system to the latest and greatest technology so we can take you to intelligent services. We're going to replace, if you think about your vestibules, and this was, I think Donna actually brought this up to us, it's a little bit of a security concern. If anybody was to be locked in your vestibules, it's a safety issue and it's definitely a comfort issue. If it's the summer, someone could get heat stroke. If it's the winter, obviously they're going to be really cold, and there is no good reason why they weren't conditioned. So we're going to condition them. And at the same time, you have two large central units on the roof that provide the makeup air. They treat outdoor air, which is the most expensive air you have to deal with because it gets really cold in the winter and really warm in the summer. Those units essentially are defunct. We would have to spend so much money to get them back to where they need to be that it was actually more cost effective to just replace them. A couple things in this project where you've been really fortunate is timing. So if you think about it, we really haven't had much of a winter, and we'll be looking at executing this project for you in a time that we'll be able to, replace those units when the weather's nice, and the same thing with the water meters as well. So that fixes the 85, 90%. So let's talk about that 10% to make sure your building gets to be where it needs to be. So intelligent services is really deploying technology to watch the system continuously. And it watches everything from the level of Anthony and I are now fighting over temperatures with our thermostat. So it shows an area has continual temperature shift, which would show a comfort problem. It shows if there's operational issues, and it trends this over time. So it will allow us to know of that 90% fix, where's the other 10%? Because you have multiple zones where you might have 5 or 6 people on one unit. And when thermally grouped on the right side of the building, the right load and the right comfort parameters for the citizen or for your users, that might be fine or it might not. So intelligent services will record that after we've recommissioned the system, got it back to its design intent to know if you need to make any additional investment. And the bottom bullet there, we worked with Michelle to fund a savings out of this project for that future investment, because like I said, this all came down to we didn't want to just rip everything out and start over. We wanted to go through a prudent design philosophy to get it back to where it needs to be, and then at that point in time, for you to have a budget you could use to execute those last couple pieces if you needed to. Yeah, your building performs well based off energy right now, but it's a little misleading. So if you remember back what I said about Energy Star, to be Energy Star, you have to be best in class, and you have to perform the major functions of the buildings. You have to light it, you have to ventilate it, you have to condition it. Unfortunately, your building right now, because your mechanical system isn't performing the way it should, isn't consuming the energy it needs to. So we wanted to be really cautious as we move forward to get you the comfort you needed without moving your bill. So that's one reason we looked at upgrading your makeup air units, because they needed so much expenditure, and we wanted a different technique and technology deployed. And part of intelligent services looks at, Anthony mentioned the term demand. On this building, you pay essentially 2 bills. You pay an energy bill, you pay a demand bill. And think about it this way. In your car, you have an odometer that tells you how far you went, and you have a speedometer that tells you the instantaneous speed you're going at. with demand, that's that instantaneous speed. You're going that 1 second. And what sets demand is when everybody comes in at the same time, everybody flips the lights on, everybody sets their heat on. What we do with intelligence services is we have what we call intelligent start, and that looks at the facility, looks at when you need comfort and where you were yesterday and the week prior. And it limits everybody bringing the system up slowly. So some of your team might come in at 6 in the morning and some might stay to 6 at night. The system will automatically look at that and balance demand and comfort, so that way Mr. Atkins will never experience discomfort, but you don't get the penalty for the bill. So the system does that and it manages demand. And just so you know, for your building, demand is about half your bill. So it's important to think about and be cognitive. That's one of the intelligence services is a lot of things, but for this facility, you'll also have demand limiting programs as well.
Are you suggesting that we stagger when people come in and when they leave, or how do you compensate when everybody comes in roughly at the same time?
No, the system does that automatically. So we all want different comfort levels. So it looks at what you want, what the space is at, and what outdoor conditions are, and it may stagger the. And when we're talking, these are things that are almost imperceivable, but they show up in your bill. So it may take 3 minutes longer for my room to come to set point, and it may take, Mr. Scott's may do it instantly, and yours may do it instantly, but the system looks across the building and says, okay, where are we? And it's one of those things too that some of your people come in 15 minutes early, some come in 10 minutes early, some come in 5 minutes early. It really takes all those data points to make sure you don't experience discomfort. You don't have to make a change. The system does, and it does it in such a way that you never know it. Does that make sense?
In years past, we've had, during our city commission meetings, times where it was very uncomfortable for citizens and for the folks in the room, and this would adapt to those
Absolutely.
Regular meetings where we may be here at 9 o'clock at night, for example.
So scheduling capability as well, when you put that in, and you know you're going to have meetings, so you can set it so that the system is not half an hour earlier, so when you come in, everybody's already covered. Schedule so you go off, but we're not running in.
Who's in charge of that schedule?
Well, there'll also be an override. The schedule is really for you to define who has it. Probably Earl and his team would be my guess, but you'll always, and you don't have this now, you'll always have the ability to override it. So if you, like you do now, if you call a special called meeting, whoever first comes in the room will be able to go to the thermostat and hit a button, and that will give you, and we define this with you, that'll give you 2 to 6 hours of override. So obviously a space like your hall here, you want to have the ability to use it whenever you want, and you'll have that in every space. Now, if you think it's being abused, you can turn that off space by space. What we find is when it's set up appropriately, people love it, they use it appropriately, and it shuts off automatically, which is the most important thing. I mean, people typically don't want to misuse energy, they just don't think about it. So if we come into the space, if it was a special called meeting, we didn't think to reset the schedule, you hit the override, you don't have to do anything else, and the system's satisfied within 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the load. I mean, obviously you bring 100 people in this room, it'll take a little bit longer, but that's one of the great benefits of the system is it makes it automatic, but you have a way to automatically, or to occupy it and override it if you need, and it's literally a button on the side of the thermostat that you just go hit, hold it for a second, and the system will see that and go on.
I think part of the problem is that what Ron was getting to is when we have a lot of people in this room, it gets hot. And we cannot get it to cool off, no matter what temperature we set it at. And we were kind of wanting those problems to get taken care of. Will this take care of those problems also?
Well, it will, and what we have to be cautious of is if we ever go over capacity, and we didn't design your system, so we went back and looked at the design parameters. If you put more than 40 people in the space, we're approaching fire code and we're approaching load limits anyway. So I want to be clear that, if it's a special meeting and it's packed, you may still have times where you get a little warm. But what you have right now that's really causing us a lot of problems is your airflow is out of balance. You're not getting the air in here you should, and it's the wrong temperature air. So your outdoor air units are failed. When it's hot, they're literally bringing hot and humid air in this space. So that's where, when we rebalance the system, replace your outdoor air units, that fixes most everything. We'll be trending So the great thing, hopefully you see it this way, the great thing is you make yourself very accessible to the city. You have a lot of meetings. We'll be trending and recording every one of those. If every one of your meetings spikes, that's where we'll be talking about that extra 10% that you may not have enough capacity. But what we look at right now, we believe if you get it back to original design and intent, get it back to the original airflows, get the controls working, get the makeup air working, you're going to be very, very happy with the comfort in here.
So as long as we have normal conditions in the room, then we should be able to be comfortable. Is what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yes.
And let me just say one thing that we've noticed. Obviously, the number of trips that we've made and the phone calls that we've had and the conversations we've had to go down and look at the control system, there have been times when we've seen that there's been a critical alarm that's been tripped and the unit's not operating because that alarm has been tripped, right? The beautiful thing about the Intelligence Services Program, which I really do appreciate and love, is the fact that there will be folks in Louisville who will be watching this at the same time you are. In other words, we've got a group of folks who man critical alarms, and they have the ability to contact you and say, hey, you've got a problem here. Do you want to address that locally, or do you want me to address that here in Louisville? Okay, so that's the good thing about it. So again, in situations like you were talking about, there could be a matter of, again, the schedule where you pre-cool the room and you won't have the issue of the people coming in too hot, but you'll also be able to see if the set points and temperatures are getting too high, you can make adjustments. Okay.
And that's a great point. Some of our clients really think of intelligence services as adding multiple super techs to their team, because that's what we're doing. We're using the technology and the team. To Anthony's point, during normal working hours, there's two very senior technicians that are sitting here looking at all of our intelligence services partners to proactively call, and you define who the point of contact is, but proactively call and go, for some reason last night your system went out of boundaries. And what's very important there is, we want to know, oh, yeah, we expect it. We had 100 people in the room because we were doing a ceremonial picture and it was 20 minutes is no big deal. We weren't dissatisfied versus, a room of 25 like we have here. You should always be comfortable. So that's a great point, Anthony, that a lot of people do think about it as adding kind of super techs to their team, because you don't always need somebody that has 35 years experience that can solve every problems, but it's great to have access to them, and that you get that platform. Great question as well, Michelle. Other questions here on City Hall? Because I know there has been a lot of pain and challenge, and we're very confident that is going to be resolved. And like I said, 85-90% will be fixed in this project, and maybe 100%. We don't like to say it unless we know it for sure, and we like to have a path where if we do see that the loading in this facility, in your space here in the chambers is off, that you wouldn't have to go back for additional money, so you would have monies there to make investments.
How do you keep the system from being hacked? Not that that's a real concern, but
Well, the best way I have to answer that is we're working with UPS and Amazon, which they have some of the highest data security requirements. I'd actually have to get our IT team here with you, but I know every time we go through that with the hardest security procedures that are out there, we pass. And most of it's because if you think about what's happened with Target and what's happened with Home Depot, they had building automation systems that gave backdoors. We've fixed that as trained, so we've learned from others' mistakes and made sure that we are compliant. But IT teams like Alex and Nick typically love us because we've taken great feedback from that world on what security threats are there and to make sure that we don't give that exposure.
Brandon rarely talks about his experience in Fort Knox. I don't know why. He's done a great job, and he's really been one of the leaders to make that based on But in order to get on that system, talk about what's required from the IT standpoint and how, if that's a secure system in Fort Knox, but it's the same system.
As a Patriot, because I am through and through, it's actually even harder to be part of UPS and Amazon. And if you think of the data that's passed, because from a government, ultra secure stuff is all independent networks, and none of us really get to know exactly how they work. But within e-commerce, you think about how much money passes through a UPS or an Amazon. Some of their data requirements are the most stringent, and that's actually some of our points that we're proudest about. But I assure you, Mayor, if you need, I'm probably not the guy for it, but we can.
I believe you.
Yeah, we passed the test there with many others. Thank you.
Brandon, I have a question as well.
Yes.
Right here. I don't know if I'm on or not. I'm on.
You're on.
Yeah, good. All right, good deal.
You're always on.
And maybe you're going to do this later, so I apologize, but what's the project cost to bring this up to speed, just this building? Do you have that estimated?
What we looked at is we looked at the utility system versus the buildings for the split. We've been working with Michelle on the expenditure. So you're investing about $6.5 million in your water utility system and about $1.5 million in the buildings. I don't remember the exact number for this building, but I can get it for you. And that's inclusive. So what we're getting ready to look at here is you do have a lot of building scope. What we've talked about here with City Hall, because there's a lot of pain with City Hall. As we went through other buildings, we've seen different levels of this where your team had just not had the opportunity or the knowledge from manufacturers on what needed to be done. And your team had done an outstanding job with what was given to them. We're just able to help get to that next step. So the next building would be the community arts building. Your curator there, she's a wonderful woman. She's done you a great job of maintaining that system. She's done the best that she can, but as our team went around and asked questions, and you've probably seen we're big building geeks. We dig in pretty deep. We had found systems that they weren't thinking about, filtration that they weren't thinking about. The picture there actually shows a filter, and that's not what I would call a premium filter. It takes a long time to load to that level. That filter had been there a long time. So what do we do to fix that building? Much like here, we get it back up to where it needs to be. The system is not at the end of its useful life, so we make some minor tweaks in the form of controls to get it onto the intelligence services system so you can see it. We can see it, that those super techs we're talking about have visibility. They know what's going on. And we get it into a regular preventative maintenance program, so you don't allow the refrigeration systems to get out of boundaries. You don't allow the filters to load and get plugged. The 911 center, very similar. So you have a 24/7 building there. So the controls you take advantage of for different reasons. With City Hall and with the Community Arts Center building, you're doing it for energy. With the 911 center, you want the ability to know what's going on at any point in time. If anybody on your team at once will have an application that they can look at to see what's going on with that facility. We'll want to get it to web-based controls. And at the same time, you have a lighting system that's essentially on 24/7. I mean, you always have people in that space. It's a good lighting system, but it's not the most efficient it could be. And there's really, really good savings to be had, so we'll upgrade that facility to LED lights. And like everything, it will enter into a preventive maintenance procedure regularly to keep the systems where they need to be. Fire Station 2 is, we did look at your older assets at the same time as your newer assets. Built a wonderful building there. It's a really, really nice building. It's only a couple years old, but the mechanical system was having some challenges due to maintenance. It had some leaks in the refrigeration system. So same scope there. We'll be getting it to intelligence services. We'll be regularly performing preventative maintenance on the facility, and there was a roof leak there. Roof leaks are really a challenge on energy. Anytime you have a leak, you saturate building structure, which isn't good for the life of the asset, and you saturate the envelope and the integrity of the insulation. So we'll be addressing that roof leak there at the same time to get the energy savings. The parking garage, Mr. Coffey had started early on looking at and exploring LED technologies there, and it started at the parking garage because obviously it's very visible and you have a lot of light there. We're going to continue on to replace all the lights in that facility. A really good, first off, improved security because you have a better lighting quality and better lights, better life of the asset, and really, really good savings. And then you have an office in there that's a transportation headquarters, and Erica had us over there a couple times to look at trouble calls that are there, systems, and you'll see a little bit of a theme. It was a good system that was applied, but it got a little age on it, and it really wasn't in the preventative maintenance program that you would want. So update it, get it into the intelligence services and preventative maintenance program to not cause challenges there. And we got hugs when we left there because they really are feeling a lot of pain because much like your chambers here, they get a surge of people and then people leave. And when the system's not working well, it cannot handle that surge. Yes, Mr. Chuck.
This is really a contract issue, I suppose, but before we leave the building review, we're talking about putting improvements in place that will be paid for over a 20-year span of time. I guess the thought occurs to me, what happens to that contract or to the guarantees if we modify the space? I mean, we might build an additional bay on the fire department, we might expand the 911 center, make other changes during that scope of time. And I guess how does that affect?
Great question. We were cognitive of it as we went through the procedure to know what systems could be changed. So the way we set up the guarantee is such that it's modifiable, if you will. So here's an example. At the fire department, the savings is based around essentially the living quarters, because what we'd heard Mr. Coffey had made us aware of is the bays may expand. Well, the bays wouldn't change your guarantee unless you asked us to go in there for co-rayback heat or something else, and then we would restructure the guarantee. So we kind of thought through each piece of that through the project. As you know, we looked at a lot of your assets looking at Fire Department 1. That would have been one of the most challenging from a contractual scenario. The rest of the buildings, we'll just have to talk about on a one-on-one basis. The one that we've struggled probably most with is your 9/11 center, because you have a lot of space in there, but you need a lot of space in there for surge. So if you were to modify that building, we would just have to reset the guarantee. And that's done regularly, and it's just something we work together as the construction process comes along. One new piece of scope that the commission hadn't seen as we went through the preliminary presentation in December, working towards this final contract presentation. We're working with Mr. Coffey, and really he brought it to our attention that while we had audited a lot of your city assets, we really didn't know a lot about Millennium Park. And Millennium Park was really, I was very impressed when we went out to Millennium Park that it's huge. You have a wonderful space there. From the street, I didn't realize it was this large. So we spent several days there looking at all the assets that were there, looking at the lighting systems, looking at the four major buildings you have out there. One of the things that we've seen is everything was kind of approaching the end of its useful life. It was starting to cause some challenges in what they sounded like. We had lights that weren't performing the way we want. We had HVAC systems that weren't performing the way we want. So the scope we looked at there was completely re-illuminate the entire park, bringing it to LED technology so you don't have any challenges with timing. You get great efficiencies, great light quality, and great lifetime. And at the same time, all buildings, your HVAC systems were approaching their useful life, so we'll change out all the HVAC systems. 3 of the 4 will be brought onto a web-based control system. The reason the 4th won't, the maintenance shop, is there's no connection there. It would cost so much money for us to get a cellular connection out there regularly in fees that it just wasn't worth it. But as your team continues to expand your wireless net out there, we can bring that building into the system when appropriate.
John let us know that there were plans to bring that building into Wi-Fi capability as well. So when that happens, we'll just add that to the program as well. He shared with us that I think he presented to the commission about some of the concerns he had about addressing the lighting there, and I think working very closely with him on what we wanted to do was a good thing for him. He's excited about it.
And that would be the only building in anything we've talked about that would not have web accessible intelligent services controls. Did everybody receive a copy of the performa ahead of time? If not, we printed out some extras. Anthony, do you mind giving those to the commissioners and the team? Okay, great. It's a lot of data on there, so I wanted to make sure that you were able to see it. We've printed out an extra copy. Let's start with the mechanics of this form, and then I want to show you how you see on this form how you receive $8 million of investment with no expenditure outside of your additional or your current operating budget. So the way the form works, everything on the bottom is an input to the tabular math at the top. So if you look on the bottom left, you see the investment there of $8 million, the total project cost. You see the bond issuance costs, and we had worked with your previous FA and are working now with Encompass to look at what Compass, sorry, still internalizing that. RJ?
No, we don't need a conflict of interest thing going on here.
Compass, yes. But the data on here, our guarantee applies to the accuracy and the new energy and the new revenues. The only piece that's on here that isn't final, because it can't be known until we actually sell the financing, is the interest rate and the final cost. But estimated bond issuance cost, you see the same $200,000 we talked about for that energy pre-funded account for City Hall, if needed, and that would be your money funded from energy to fix any challenges that we seen that came up, that we would essentially identify together. We would make a proposal to you, and you would approve, and it may not be spent. So we wanted to make sure that money stayed with you for a total financed amount of $8.4 million. So now let's look at the top. Everything in blue is a new expenditure. So you have obviously the year 1 through 20, just an amortization schedule here. You have a total lease payment. You see year 1, that's $566,817. You have support services, and support services is 4 components, 3 with train, 1 with census. The 4 components are the ongoing M&V process, and one detail I didn't cover is in your construction project, we will buy a surplus of meters that your team will have and they will inventory. We will annually pull from that inventory to go test your system and prove the M&V. So part of that service is our ongoing test. And you may or may not know, this is kind of down in the weeds detail, but it is, an additional benefit you really get during M&V. When we take a meter out, obviously you're taking your citizen, that business, out of work for a short time period. Your commercial meters, many of them don't have bypasses. We're going to be putting bypasses in where we can, so that way when we go back and test meters, you're not going to have to take your business out of service. So a nice benefit you're going to get there through the M&V process. Bypasses and test ports, obviously. So the 3 components with train will be the M&V services to continue your guarantee and really prove out the savings over the entire relationship of the contract. Will be the ongoing intelligence services program and the ongoing preventative maintenance program. The 4th component in that is the system that you're looking at with census is a hosted system, and Mayor Alex and your team looked at that to think about the asset, to think about the security. And it was really preferred because it is a hosted data that's out there separate. There is an ongoing fee for that, so that fee is included. That's not in trains contract that you have to review, but we want to make sure you have all the cost visible, because that is a cost you have. So those 4 are in support services. The sum of the leasing payment and the support payment make a total annual cost. So now we go to yellow. In the yellow side of the form is energy savings, it's new water revenue, and operational savings. So the energy savings are from putting in the energy efficient systems, the controls, the lights that we've talked about, reducing your bill. The water meters is from putting in the new accurate meters in the AMI system that we've tested your existing system for its inaccuracy, improving the accuracy over a 20-year period to drive new revenue. And the operational savings are reducing maintenance expenditures, not having to have people go do manual rereads and do meter reads. The sum of those 3 is your total savings. So I want to stop for just a second and prove to you how this is a paid for from savings project. If you look at the far right column, it says savings in excess of expense. You see at the bottom $534,000, and you see capital cost avoidance at $467,000. The sum of those 2, with obviously positive being savings in excess, is what completely pays for this project from savings. I have to share with you, this is the best financials of a municipal project that I've had the opportunity of working on. Many times municipalities will invest up to the limit of contractual statutes, which is 50% of savings. You're paying for this all out of savings. So wonderful things for your citizens, and just really being a good steward of taxpayer monies. So what is capital cost avoidance? Capital cost avoidance, first off, is a mathematical function to set the boundaries in a contract that half of the contract has to be funded from savings. Here, it's really not applicable. The next step, as we meet with Michelle and with RJ to schedule out how you want the financing, This job will probably be bonded, so you'll sell loans essentially in $1,000 increments, and you will have a aggregated interest schedule. Early on, now's a wonderful time for you to be doing this because rates are great. Your first couple of years, your rates will be really low. What we'll work to do is we'll balance that out in the performance, so you don't see any out of any expenditure out of pocket or above your existing operating budget right now. And that's something that your financial partners will do. We'll do it with them, but they're responsible for that. Does that make sense on how you're getting $8 million of investment paid from your existing operating budget? Paid for over time, yes. Over time, yes. So great straight man. So let's next slide really calls that out. So it just breaks out some summary information here that you're making an investment level of $8 million with financing about 8.4. That's scheduled at a 3% rate, which we'd work to say that that's conservative now. We've got to get to the market soon. So this contract is ready. It's executable for you. We really do have to get it. So the next steps would be approve the contract for Michelle and RJ and our team to sit down and work on the finance and get the thing sold because the market is ripe. The one thing that we all know is rates are going up. And then after you get your financing, the final signature in the contract is a notice to proceed. So you execute the contract, get your financing, and then provide us a notice to proceed. But the total revenue there of $13.6 million balanced against the total investment, all costs accounted for, of $3.1 million. And that's just another way to look at, over time, completely funded from savings. Some other just system benefits that you're really getting here, and we've spent a lot of time on this, so I won't spend too long, but it is a very different partnership you're entering into here in a guaranteed performance contract. We do not have the opportunity even to come back to you to say, oh, commission, I didn't realize it was raining today. It's harder for us to work in the rain. This contract we gave you is fully executable, and the numbers don't change. The cost and investment levels don't change. At the same time, the savings don't change over time. So it is a fully audited, fully executable contract to deliver. No change orders at all. Obviously addresses the facility needs that you've made us aware of, we've talked about, and there's a lot of intangibles in that, but you think of the challenges you've had when you've been in the chambers in a commission meeting, and it's been uncomfortable or not setbacks, so a lot to that. It does fully upgrade your utility system. This was a liability, Mr. Coffey made us aware of it. Obviously you knew about it, you were putting a plan together, but it pays for a liability that you had from savings, so that by itself, a big advantage. Reduces your utility expenditures, your operating costs. It improves the environment in the workplaces that your team and your citizens are coming into. So, just Danville has a wonderful image, and it just keeps it there and keeps it moving forward. And it really is a good stewardship. We hear this time and time again from our clients. They hear it back from their citizens on, how proud they are to have seen an upgrade like this that is funded without new taxes. No one likes new taxes, so it is good stewardship. And the final point I'd really leave you with here is, even if you hired Mr. Wright and myself to go do this work independently outside of a performance contract, you don't get the same benefit. You don't get the guarantee, which has a lot of financial benefits for you within the market, just knowing that you're not taking on a new liability. It is covered from savings. And that last bullet, the sustainability. From the point in time we start on this project until the end of the 20-year term, we are going to look at this project multiple times a year and prove to you that you're getting your savings. And like anything, if you take your eyes off the ball, you miss. And it's so critical, and it's a huge difference in a performance contract, is having a true professional partner that's with you to the end of time, to the end of the contract at least, not the end of time, but the end of the contract. You think of most of the construction procedures you go through, it truly is an event. You hire somebody, they design it, they pass it to somebody else. You get a lot of finger pointing when there's a problem. You call us when there's challenges that would happen.
Hey, Michelle, I have a question. So when I go down through here, years 1 through 10, the total cost and the total revenue are dollar for dollar the same. They begin to change at 11 through 20. Why is that?
That's because we're putting money in, that's considering our operational savings. That's where we're putting the money in, where he was talking about the extra stuff for repairs. With the excess expenses, when it starts doing that, that is just free and clear money, not money that we're putting back for capital improvements.
And Mayor, that will actually, the next step is to balance those two out. The line I might draw your attention to is where it says total cost year one at 634, total savings at 546. So you show a deficit year one. You go, okay, well, is that truly paid for from savings? What we can't do on here, because we don't know what it will be, is actually balance those interest costs. So what RJ will do is he'll take that excess savings and balance it, with the capital cost avoidance and the rate reduction that you're going to see, because bonds right now, the first 3 to 5 years are really selling cheap, so you'll get a reduced rate that we don't show there in that first couple of years.
Yeah, that first column, it does that when you got a straight line principal interest, right? So obviously that would change once we actually do funding with our right out there.
So with a straight line P&I, your operational savings over time goes down because you've got new equipment. And so what in a nutshell, the argument is that your operational savings takes 10 years for that to overcome the straight line P&I to illustrate a what you would say is a theoretical return on your investment, right? And so then if P&I, if I is in your favor compared to their assumptions, then you may realize a return on that investment a year or two before that or a year or two after that.
On the maintenance, you all take responsibility for that, or did I?
We do for maintenance. So in your contract, you'll see the scope that we're delivering for you. Now, maintenance, not repair. I mean, we could have looked at just what we call bumper to bumper, where anything comes up, we have it. But it's kind of like buying insurance. Most cities don't like buying insurance on their mechanical systems. But what you have in the contract is the preventive maintenance scope that we'll deliver and the intelligence services. So it's intended to be all-inclusive for knowns. We don't know if there's obviously a lightning strike. Well, that can't be known.
That's included in line 2 in their service support contract. The second column, I mean.
Do we have a breakdown on the bond issuance costs?
We'll get a breakdown on that. That's an estimate on the bond issuance cost. This is totally estimates until we get the final contract, and then we can put it in, and we'll get that whenever we have that. This is based on previous. That would include all costs, including bond counsel. And
This is a great pro forma illustrating the savings over time. I guess I am curious, because I don't recall right now the calculation on how you adjusted for rise in energy cost. We talk about efficiencies and so forth, but did you net out projected pure energy
We do,
costs?
and there. What we do is we try to call out all the assumptions on that performa, so it includes your water rate increases over time and your energy. What we have to be cautious with this conversation, because it is very, very charged. Utilities is really, really challenging. So we always deal with what are the facts. So the facts come down to what is the energy you've been paying for and what is the bill. And I'll say this very appropriately. Utility companies are really good about charging for items. So one example, a really, really large customer of ours had a very, very large weather adjustment. It's the input fuel to make electricity. Let's just go ahead and show it in rate. Well, that utility chose not to show it in rate. So that's why we always come back to what is the bill that the client's paying and what is the energy they consumed. Most clients are seeing, 5, 6, 7, 8% year over year increases. We all know that that's not sustainable. I mean, that just can't continue. That's why we've chose to use 4% as a conservative number for escalation for energy. For water, 2%, which is about what you've been seeing over time. So we work with your team on each one of those inputs to make sure that they're, because we want them to be accurate, but we want them to lean towards the conservative side. Obviously, if you plan on a 9% year-over-year increase and it changes, then that's a challenge. But energy's only been going up, unfortunately. Electric, not gas, but there's really no gas savings in here. Good question, though.
I think you explained this once before, but I'm going to ask again. How do you assure guaranteed savings?
Great question. And I'll give you the short answer, and you let me know if you need more detail, because this could be a much longer answer. Let's go on the simplest one. So lights. We go out and test beforehand, audit your system, get a count. So let's use this room for example. We get a count, and let's just say there's 8, there's 11 fluorescent lights in here. We won't pay attention to the architectural. We go get that count, we get up, and we physically measure and verify what's there. So these are probably what's called a T8 light, a 32 or 34 watt light, and these are T8. So we then draw out what the wattage of the system is, and we collectively come up with what the burn hours are. So an office building, what we normally say is it's probably 6 hours a day, something like that, because not every light's on, or at least we hope not every light's on every day. So we mutually look at what the burn hours are of the light, and we go out and we pick a new light. So to Mr. Wright's point, we pick a T8 or an LED, which might be 9 watts or 13 watts. So the known energy, instantaneous energy difference is the 34 minus the 9 to give you a savings times the burn hours. So how your guarantee works is we go out and we test it before we begin work. We test it after construction. So we've proven it. The only variable is the burn hours. And then we collectively, and what we've said to do is we'll only do that once, because it's really not one of those things you want to pay for. So we'll verify it once, and then it's really incumbent upon you to make sure that we don't turn on 24/7. If you do, you'll actually get more savings than you would have, because you get your energy difference. So that's the simplest. Let's go to, in your project, probably one of the more complex, the water meters, which is where most of your water revenue, or most of your revenue comes from. So what we did is we tested your city beforehand. We take a sample, or a statistically relevant sample, and we test it to see the level of inaccuracy. And we test that sample to make sure it's accurate. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to overestimate or underestimate. We want to make sure it's accurate. So we work a lot with your team to audit as much of the system as we can, pull a sample, test it. We then go to that new manufacturer. So for you were 13% commercial, 8% residential inaccuracy. We then go to the manufacturing. We selected Census, which is really best-in-class technology. We look at what can we guarantee for new accuracies. The difference between the new accuracy and the old accuracy is now a savings, and we apply it to an average load. So what we did for your city is we used the last 2 years, saying that's a good estimate. If the city grows, our savings will actually grow. If we had a concern that the city was shrinking, we want to be cautious with that, but we have good feeling that your system will stabilize or increase over time for water consumption. So you apply that load that the city used to that new accuracy increase to drive a revenue at the associated rate. What makes it challenging is you may or may not know you have a lot of different rate categories, so we had to make sure to use the lesser of the possible rate category, because you have 40 something rate codes probably. You had a lot of rate codes, so we want to make sure we're using very, very conservative rate codes. And that's all that is actually called. It's fun reading too if you need a little reading late at night. But all that's called out in line by line in the contract. Does that help? Because it's important to understand the mechanics. So when you think of it, okay, well, what's our risk as a city? Because what we have to deliver on is next year we'll have to go test those meters. We'll have to prove they're accurate. If they're not accurate, we'll have to replace them or cut you a check. And just so you know, good comfort for you, we don't have to execute on these guarantees. We spend a lot of time getting here, but we do it methodically to make sure that we're providing what you need and what we can guarantee. And there's also a factor of safety built in to make sure that we leave a little bit of margin in there for you. But for some reason, if it was not to perform, we either have to change out that meter or we have to cut you a check. What we would do in that scenario is change out or fix that meter, because meters don't repair themselves. So if it was a problem this year, it would be a problem next year. And as a guaranteeing entity, it's in our best interest, first off, for it not to fail, and second off, for us to correct it if it does. So what are the kind of things that wouldn't be covered there? If you had major disturbances in your infrastructure, the grit, grime, rocks that cause a meter to fail, that's a repair. That's not train's responsibility. Same responsibility you have now that if you had a contractor that worked in your system and put his lunchbox in a pipe and, you know, rocks and stuff went through it, you're going to have meters fail. So we both collectively have that risk going forward, but that would not be a point to execute the guarantee. If the meter is working, we have to make sure it's in the accuracy range that we guarantee you year 1 to year 20.
Yeah, you answered that just the way I wanted to answer it. I appreciate the engineering answer, and what I really like to hear is that because we're engineers, if we misread how we're giving you savings, we'll fix it at our cost. It's kind of similar to my business, actually. So you're being honorable, and I appreciate that answer.
This is a great presentation and demonstrates that we have good data and just for the guarantee. One of the items we talked about during the course of this very long examination that, as you say, took over a year really to complete, to audit our records and so forth, was the potential for having savings on our street lighting. And that is not within this scope, but our mutual conclusion. But you might want to elaborate the difficulty of achieving a guarantee and whether that might be possible in the future for street lighting, which is also a major cost consideration for the city.
Yeah, absolutely is. No, it's a great question because it's something that the technical solution is absolutely there. So it's in the utility being able to clearly tell you how much you still owe for the assets there, and you either potentially buying it back, which most utilities in Kentucky, elsewhere they're being mandated to, but in Kentucky they're not mandated to sell you back the asset if you want it, because they may or may not know exactly how much you still owe for it, and the rate they will give you on the future cost of the asset. So it's something that we absolutely would love to explore with you if you have interest, and there's a great technical and financial case to be built, but it will take cooperation. Obviously, your city is very much ready to cooperate, but it takes cooperation with the utility. And we've had the great privilege of the first 2 cities completely re-illuminated in the state. We're done with our team through a mechanism like this, but they were done with non-utility power generators that were in a different territory. And this territory.
Yeah, great cooperation with the utility, and that has resulted in, if you look at the numbers, about 67% in savings.
Yeah, great payback.
Is that based upon existing technology or new?
It's existing. It is the first 2 completely illuminated LED cities we did, and it's it is modern technology but tested. So one of the things we always have to do is we partner with a city like you. So we have to make sure we can stand behind it. There's a lot of LEDs in the world, but not all LEDs are created equal, if you will. And we have to make sure if we provide a warranty, it's something that we can stand behind, because we know it's a company that's going to be there. So we selected 2 different partners, and both those that were actually different, but really, really good technologies. As Mr. Wright said, great payback. You get great benefits as a city because when you re-illuminate an entire city, you reset your design limits, so everything looks the same. You don't have hot spots and dark spots. It actually improves security. It is tons of benefits, and we would love to continue to explore that. One of the great things that we can do as we go forward, we can continue to look at things like that, and you can either add them onto this contract, or we could look at them separate.
Who are these 2 communities, please?
City of Fulton and City of Hickman. Hickman, Kentucky, and Fulton, Kentucky. Both far western, both in TVA territories. It is a long road trip. It makes for a long day.
Yeah. Earl, I have a question. Why do we have 40 different codes? Do we need 40 different codes?
Yeah, you have different tax. There's county tax, school tax, county property tax, school property tax, various combinations of those, Perryville rate codes, Junction City rate codes, City of Danville rate codes, out of city rate codes. So what it happens is you end up structurally needing different codes in the computer to account for the different sales tax or who's taxing
Or school
them,
tax.
Right. So it becomes fairly complicated necessarily just to account for all the taxes the way they are organized.
What we also
Who they're assigned to.
Yeah, who they're assigned to, because we have
That's a better
sales
word.
tax and we have, what's different school districts and taxes. We have 3 different school districts we pay tax to. The other thing is they didn't mention, this will also help with operator error if we go forward with this, because right now the gentlemen that read the meters, like they said, have to decide whether it's a cubic foot or a gallon meter, and then when they bring it back, the girls the billing has to decide whether it's a cubic foot or a gallon meter, and some of those they have to manually enter, and so it will help knock down on operator error also, not just mechanical
But
error,
it really-
not mechanical error, but operation errors also that just naturally happen.
Biggest benefit too then becomes non-revenue water. Revenue or water that is going through a meter that is just not billed correctly. It's billed as one unit versus another unit, and you lose revenue in that way. I mean, that's the non-revenue water is what you're trying to account for, and it gives a chance to synchronize all of those, oversimplifying then how you collect that data. Makes instantaneous your opportunity to collect the data, definitely inside of the the 6,500, 7,000 meter area out of the 11,000.
And this also take up for meters that are locked, meters that we just don't have time to go out and change out and that they're locked or fined, that we're losing a lot of revenue on.
What happens to these numbers if you change the energy escalation rate from 4 to 5?
Payback would increase, and we're happy to use any input you want there. I mean, like I said, year over year, many of our clients are saying close to double digits. We just try to be as conservative, and as I shared earlier, you have done a great job as a city. This is some of the best financials we see with some of our clients because you've made sure to make an investment in very, very high return systems while fixing a lot of challenges that you had. But it's a stroke of a key if you'd like us to change it.
Well, I also agree this is an excellent presentation. My questions all stem from the point that it's going to take 10 years for savings in excess of expenses, and I understand why there's a need for that to happen. But I plan to be around year 21 and still be on the commission. So tell me what the commission and the city is going to be confronted.
Great question, and two points there, because we actually intend with your financing partner to drive savings year 1. So the first step we'll do next is to meet with your financing partner to balance out that capital cost avoidance and the excess. So you'll actually start to get savings year 1. But your question is great. So year 21, what do we do? Your system, we will be maintaining and monitoring the accuracy. So you're going to see the accuracy every year. So year 20, you're going to know exactly where you are. My belief, year 13, year 15, you need to start planning on where do we want to be year 20, year 25. You will not have to do anything year 21, but this gives you really the way to look at it from an asset management standpoint of we've renewed the system at that point in time. You may want to, 5-10 years from now, convert your existing meters, the 2000 AMR meters you have to AMI, and you may want to be phasing them out, but it really allows Earl and his team to put an asset management thought around this of where do we want to be year 21, year 30, year 35, because you will, year 25, year 30, you're going to make changes.
Then there'll be other funds, additional funds for maintenance and for improvement, so it'll be a continuous process.
Absolutely.
The whole goal in this project is to have a revolving maintenance fund.
Well, I understand that.
So that we don't fall into the same situation that we're in right now. So that we can continue to have that revolving maintenance fund to keep going forward.
And since I plan to be around for year 21, I'm pretty confident Train plans to be around for 21.
Absolutely, yeah. And you bring up a great point too. When we cover the team, Anthony and I tend to be connected with you through this entire partnership. But and I always like to look at the positive. If I win the lottery, which I don't play, but if I win the lottery, you have others behind us to fulfill that.
It goes with you.
we might meet for other reasons.
That's right.
You've touched upon this increased service aspect to the citizens earlier in terms of water service, in terms of being able to instantaneously see if there may be a problem in terms of a breakage or a flow issue. But this improved technology would also give the city a far greater capacity to do monthly billing rather than bi-monthly
Absolutely.
billing. And
Great point.
a lot of citizens have requested that because they like to budget every month, and it would be increased service to be able to do that. Now, we'll have increased mailing cost if we do that, obviously, but we'll have decreased in terms of meter reading cost. So that could be an improved service that we could provide as well.
And you think of the service that we provide you is we'll put your new system in. We have to fully integrate it into your billing procedure. So if now's the time to go to monthly billing, that's an easy change for us at that point in time if you direct us.
And a bigger service that you will provide without increasing cost is our ability to go out and do maintenance, like on valves, so that, for example, if you have a water main break near a commercial area where you have multiple restaurants, the likelihood of those restaurants seeing an outage for an extended period of time is decreased. So the length of that outage would go down in theory. The likelihood of boil water advisories for those restaurants would go down, or residences. And so there's operational advantages that to the customer that are not just in billing, that are not just in software. That one question I did have that I don't know to the extent that, because I was working a little bit there, but explain exactly what your guarantee looks like structurally. A bond, how is that, if something goes completely south, how does the city reclaim those savings over time without Train's presence there? What does that look like?
Well, great question. That's why it's important that it's not just Anthony and I's net worth or even Harshaw Train's net worth. The backing and the validity of the guarantee. Well, first off, and I guess how I'd answer that, Mr. Coffey, is first off, we have a great history, and you've seen one of many where we've not had to execute against the guarantee. So we spent a tremendous time to make effort and time to make sure we don't mutually end up in a scenario where we have to execute the guarantee. But if you have to, it's very, very important to understand it. It's not, it's not just us. It's not just Harshaw Train locally. It is actually Ingersoll Rand. So it is carried on the Ingersoll Rand balance sheet. Ingersoll Rand is a huge holding company. I shared earlier, I'm a car guy. You might you might think tools when you see Ingersoll Rand. They're one of the most astute companies in the world. Very large holding company that they buy very diverse brands. They acquired Train about 6 or 8 years ago, and it's been great investment since. But this project is backed all the way from our local level all the way to our parent company, Ingersoll Rand, actually is footnoted on their balance sheet as a liability that they have to account for. So you have $18 billion in resources behind to make sure if there is a challenge that's executed, that it's there and that it's with a solvent large company.
You also said two very important things that I'd like to ask you to repeat and make sure that the reporter is paying attention to that at that time. The first one is that you said this project is 100% paid for from savings and from revenues. And then the second one that's really, really important to me is that you stressed over and over again about how friendly and how qualified our staff has been assisting you with this project, and that they're user-friendly. And we need that kind of PR to get out to the citizens, because we oftentimes, as commissioners here, are quite the opposite.
And it's absolutely true. So what we have to do for you is either made easier or harder by your team. And your team has a great spirit of cooperation, and it's just been very accessible. When you think that we do have to come in, and unfortunately, we have to adjust people's days. Mr. Coffey, everybody on your team has a day job, so they would have to give us a portion of their day to help us go out and develop this. So absolutely, I mean, amen to that. It's through and through how much your team had helped and partnered with us.
Playing off UJH, this is a proactive approach.
Yes.
So their business being similar to mine, preventive maintenance is way ahead of the game instead of trying to catch up. failing. So I think it's a positive thing to get out there as well.
It also allows us to be more proactive ourselves, not just what we're doing on our buildings and on our equipment, but it allows us to be proactive with the citizens also a lot more than we are now. It frees up the time for the water utility to be a lot more proactive.
I wish.
I ask our city manager, based on our retreat some 2.5 weeks ago, put together a list. How are we going to prioritize that list?
Well, that's a great question too, and it's sort of the follow-up question to this initial presentation. But we have other needs of the city going ahead as well, and we had hoped to have that discussion with the city commission, so I'm glad you asked the question. Seemingly, as we enter the next fiscal year, we have this project that's project ready, or we could start before July 1 and carry forward. We also are nearing completion, and Earl could comment on this, of our EDA grant application that would make further water system improvements down to Perryville. And Earl, why don't you just comment on that and the cost of that for at least the next fiscal year?
Well, for the immediate fiscal year, you're looking at a $2 to $3 million water distribution improvement project where you're installing a 16-inch main for a good chunk. We only really have one other one to give you the scale of what that looks like for the distribution system. We only have, maybe 2 miles of 16-inch main in one section up to this point. And so this then you would, you're going to extend the 12-inch through the industrial park from Corporate Drive over to Perryville Road. And we have limited 12-inch main. You have 12-inch main around the bypass now, and basically out Perryville or Lebanon Road to the industrial park now. So on a scale, that's what it looks like. In financial dollars, you're looking at $3 million. Then you still have to follow that up with the construction of the tank, which supports the distribution system in the west end of the county. And that's, could be as much as another $3 million in the subsequent year.
What we're looking forward to is we have to think of calendar years when we're borrowing money, because that's how it works on qualified debt. And so if you all decide to go forward on this project, this would be our 2017 big project of going forward on debt as far as debt wise. Then we're looking for a 2018 priority is maybe doing the fire station, fire truck, of course, continuing with the Perryville Road standpipe project. And then also in 2019, if you want to go as far out as that, then we go on out to the sewer, where we're going to bring in the sewer plant to you, big major sewer plant upgrade, and maybe some stormwater projects that we're working on right now. That'll be bigger projects that we'll actually have to borrow money for.
And I think it's important that as we prioritize things that do a couple of things. That is that, number one, they pay for themselves over time. Number two, that they improve services to our citizens. And there's no doubt, if I look at the priority list, this comes to the top in my mind. And then Earl's project that he just mentioned, because I think that pays for itself rather quickly as well. So I think that's how I look at prioritizing things. But till the city wins the lottery, we can take care of a lot of those projects. But this is really an excellent way to say to the city we're investing their money very, very, very wisely.
Likewise, we have 30 million then identified for the next three years, and we haven't talked about street light improvements or other sort of capital improvements or ongoing capital needs. Now we're looking at also saving money if we enter into a lease program for our city.
We're going to bring forward to you all in the very near future a fleet project that Earl and I have been working on, and where we lease our cars instead of purchasing them. So it'll be like a leased program, but that could potentially over the next 10 years service up to $600,000.
Oh, and then if over the course of the next 2 years, the three of us are going to be around, Lord willing, for the next 2 years, we go ahead and do the $30 million.
Let me ask bond counsel a question, if I may. In today's market, everything else being equal, What would be the interest cost difference in a 20-year bank qualified bond issue versus a 20-year non-bank qualified? We talking 1/4%?
It varies roughly about 1/4%. And one of the things that we would like to do with the bond Michelle is actually look at a long-term capital plan. $30 million of this type project that we know are coming in the next few years. Then there, we actually have a sensitivity analysis to say, if rates rise
Right.
30 or 40 basis points,
Right.
are we better off to issue not
Thank you.
qualified loans?
Thank you.
Bonds today at a lower rate.
Because there's going to be another factor in there, and that is if we wait 5 years to build a new fire station, for example, anybody here think the building costs are going to be the same or less in 5 years? Of course not. So yes, we need to do that analysis, because I am not afraid of doing non-bank qualified bonds. I know we've got in our head here that we need to stay with the 10 million, but I think that analysis is going to be absolutely critical for us to really say, okay, let's get outside of that boundary and let's really look at our needs and how our costs today may actually be different in the future. Because I think it's a safe assumption to make that 5 years from now, rates are going to be higher. I think it's how much, I have no idea, but I think it's a safe assumption to say they're going to be higher.
And I think the multiple studies say that if the PQ designation is what 20 to 25 basis points, the Fed's already discussing 2 interest rate hikes this year.
Right.
Which doesn't have a direct impact on us, but certainly there's a correlation.
Sure.
And so potentially, the 20 to 25 basis points we save by staying on our $10 million allocation annually could be gone by this time.
And the other small savings there's not a whole lot of difference in terms of fixed cost. There's, in terms of bond counsel costs and financial advisory costs of whether you do 10 or 50 million. You know, bond counsel and financial advisory costs are essentially the same. The cost of issuance, of course, goes up proportionally.
The other thing we have to look at is how everything will affect our bond rating too, because we were
That's correct.
We have to-
That's a good variable. Thanks for bringing that up.
think about how everything will affect our bond ratings. Because if you borrow too much, too consecutively, sometimes that affects your bond rating.
Say it again, if you borrow what now?
Too consecutively, our last bond rating, we got real hard when we brought our bond rating up to a pretty good bond rating. One of the things that brought it up is we said we wouldn't borrow money in the next 2 years, and we didn't. We kept our word. We did not borrow in the next 2 years because they look at that.
It went up, not down, right?
No, it went up. Yes, our bond rating went up.
So are you saying that if we do 10 million each year for the next 3 years,
We got to look at that. We've got to discuss that and how we're going to present that to the bond rating when we present that to Moody's.
That's compared to 30 million at one time.
why does Moody's care the frequency of rating if the city's got the debt service to cover the issuance? Why do they care?
Your coverage ratio is still lower because all of that left debt is going to roll off.
Right?
And so if you replace it kind of strategically, and then you can also wrap the debt around existing debt to make sure that
Yep, good.
Oh, wait, before you leave, though, would you explain this has been taped, right? Explain the three contracts. Oh, oh.
I would anticipate that our city attorney will complete his review. We'll have a staff discussion, probably a follow-up meeting with you, and then bring a recommendation to the city commission at a future point in time.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank staff for getting it this far.
Mayor, I think we've completed our special meeting agenda, unless there are concluding comments the commission wishes to make ahead of our lunch schedule.
It says other capital improvement needs discussion. We're not going to discuss the other capital needs.
I think we generally discuss those. We could discuss them in greater detail if you wish.
My question on that is, do we have are we going to do this in March? We're going to do this in April? When would you anticipate us getting into that? And don't you see that as being a special meeting?
Most probably, it would be. I don't know that I have a fixed plan for that, but probably the optimal time would be as we bring back this proposed energy savings agreement. We might at that time in a special meeting talk in some greater detail about our other capital needs. That would make some sense to me to do at the same time, but that would probably be in March.
I think this will be involved in our budget process going forward.
Apparently be,
I
but
see the sooner the better. Anything else? Do I hear a motion we adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Favor say aye.
Aye.